Let's be honest, we don't know anything about our elected officials. They're hidden behind curated social media profiles and press releases to the point that they often seem barely human. We're here to break down those barriers and get under the hood of their real character. Our guest today is former New Jersey Governor Christy Todd Whitman. My name is Scott Salmon, and this is Politically Driven. What was your earliest memory related to politics?
Staying up late with my mother counting paper ballots at the Oldwick Firehouse.
That's cool.
Yeah,
How old were you?
Back in those days. I know I got to stay up way past my bedtime, so I must have been around 7 or 8. They couldn't get babysitters for me. I was too badly behaved, so she had to take me with her.
What did you think you wanted to do with your life?
I wanted to be a surgeon.
Oh, that's cool.
I like cutting up worms and things like that. And I was really good on the dissection in school, but when I figured out that I really had to learn about things like the sex life of the moss and fern and stuff like that, and the phloem and the xylem, I thought, no, it's going to take too long.
I'm honestly impressed that you still remember those words, because I definitely would not have.
My husband always says that our marriage vows were for better, for worse, for politics. And we had lived in England for 2.5 years, and when we came back, and our daughter had been born over there, and then we had our son, and decided it was time I wanted to get involved again. Okay. And so I was appointed to the county college board. And then when they asked me to run for freeholder, it was the quote-unquote woman seat, and I wanted to try it. It was an executive position, and I liked that idea.
So there had to be some moment there where you thought, I could do this, there's no reason why I can't do this.
Well, it's a very Republican county.
Okay.
And very strong Republican control, and yes, it was a chance. It was an election, and we campaigned really hard and did a lot of door-to-door, didn't take anything for granted, but it wasn't as big a leap as, for instance, running for Senate in 1990. Well, I never sort of thought I would be governor, but I had decided by the time I ran for governor, I decided the best job in the world would be to be governor of the state of New Jersey, and I wasn't happy with what was going on in the state at the time, so I said, okay, I'm going to take this on and give it a try. Well, that was the hardest thing. My brother, who was involved with the campaign, said, you got to have an ego.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't know whether it's more women than men who don't like to believe they have an ego. But he said, why should anybody vote for? If you don't believe if you don't believe in yourself and believe that you are the best person, why should they vote for you? Advert to the other person, that you're not better than that other person.
Now, did you have a favorite teacher growing up?
Yes, actually. It was back in the days when teachers did everything. Mrs. Noling, she was called, was her name, and she taught English history, English literature, grammar, Latin. She put on all the plays that we did, creative writing, and all the musicals, and she taught piano.
Oh, do you play piano?
No.
Okay.
I think I was the only person that she actually finally said to my mother, this isn't worth it. I hated practicing.
Other than cutting up worms, what other hobbies did you have?
Riding. I rode horses.
Right. Okay.
I grew up with them. My best friend lived on the farm next door.
Right.
Come home from school, you throw a bridle on, maybe a saddle, maybe not, and ride over, and then we'd go out together.
That's amazing.
After I was governor, while I was governor, I couldn't go anywhere in the world, literally, without somebody being there. And all it told me about was New Jersey is everywhere. But even in Cambodia, I was in Cambodia doing an election mission, observation mission, and we were in some
Which is probably the coolest reason to be in Cambodia.
Yeah, it is. It's a great reason to be there. In the back village, a little village, watching to see how the village chief, the communist leader, was either doing what he should do or not do. Anyway, and I was standing in this schoolhouse, which is where they were having the polling place, and all of a sudden I hear this voice saying, you look like Christy Whitman. And it was some fellow from Pennsylvania who had a house at the Jersey Shore, who was home in Cambodia to vote. And you want to say, okay, everywhere I go, people are either from New Jersey, they were born here, they went to school here, they married somebody from here, or they had a job here, or they live here. I mean, it's just amazing. We're everywhere. Yeah.
I can't imagine being recognized there, just a place where you're absolutely not expecting it.
Well, one time in Alaska, too, we were up when I was at EPA, and we were going up to Denali, and the plane was a little puddle jumper to get us up there, and I can't remember, the weather was so bad we had to come down at this grass field in the middle of nowhere with no transportation to the nearest town except some guy who was sitting there in his old pickup truck, and so we hitched a ride with him into town, and there was one sort of restaurant there, diner restaurant, not even diner, and
Diner must have felt right at home.
and there was one other. It wasn't a diner though.
Okay.
That's the trouble. And there was one other family there, and they were from New Jersey, middle of nowhere. They were the only people in the town. Us, the 2 bars, the one. It was a general store.
Right.
It's also served food, and they were from New
Wow.
Jersey.
It seemed to me like most great politicians, and I think you have this, is they have that sense of destiny. Like, I'm meant to do this. I can do this. I know I can do this.
I don't know that I had a sense of destiny, though. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do.
Right.
I knew why I wanted to do it.
Right.
And when the opportunities came, I said, all right, I'm going to give it a try. I mean, for instance, when I was freeholder and I was, well, first of all, let me say, I have a very short attention span.
Okay.
The longest job I've held in my life was governor.
Fair enough.
I just like going up a learning curve.
Right.
And when you start planing out, that's when I get restless.
Right.
But when Tom Kane asked me if I would become president of the Board of Public Utilities, I knew nothing about regulating utilities. That's when I really felt I was swimming upstream.
Do you think being a freeholder, was that actually good preparation for being governor?
Oh yeah, it was
Okay.
very good because it was executive branch.
Right.
And there's just a world of difference between executive and legislative. I don't have the temperament for legislative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God bless those who do and can put up with it.
Right.
I'd go nuts.
Right.
Well, you get good people,
Right.
and then you let them go.
Right.
I mean, as governor, you set the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You say, this is what I want to accomplish, and then what I expected. I always use the riding analogy because I grew up riding, and I said I'd always rather have a horse I had to rein in than one I had to kick.
Okay. I like
And
that.
so I'd rather have a cabinet member who would occasionally get ahead of me, and that happened.
Mhm.
And I'd have to say, wait a minute, I'm not there yet. You know, you can't, no, let's back off this. Then when I was kind of, come on, let's think about this, let's think about that. And I'd tell them in general the kinds of things I wanted to accomplish. And I said, you figure out how we get there. Let's figure out how to do it. Tell me if I'm crazy. If you think I'm crazy and this is a lousy idea. But if you don't think it's a lousy idea and I'm crazy, then tell me how to get there.
Sure.
Let's figure out how we get this done. But you have the expertise in your department. You know how to do this. Let people do their thing to a degree. If you're trying to micromanage,
Right.
the
It's
best
not gonna
people
work.
are not interested, and it's not going to work. Well, that's the fun thing about life.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
You should always be learning something.
Yes, that's definitely true.
You know, it's what makes it interesting.
Right.
And you never know everything. And when I talk to kids, I say to them, look, don't think you need to know everything about everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn.
Mm-hmm.
Have some faith in yourself and
Right.
your ability to learn on the job. It's particularly for young girls, because with all due respect, you give a male an opportunity to do something about
100%.
which they know nothing, and they'll say, fine, bring it on, I'll do it. And you give a woman that same, or a girl that same opportunity, and she says, wait a minute, somebody who knows more than I do. And yeah, we worked hard on both of them. And then in the intervening years, because I came so close to Bradley, I mean, that Bradley race was one of those things where every morning I woke up thinking, okay, when's he going to blow me out of the water? Because all he had to say, my whole thing about it, because we didn't disagree that much on policy positions back in those days. It's the only time I've ever played the sex card, as it were. The gender card was he wouldn't give debates, which most incumbents don't do, because you don't want to give your opponent any airtime. And I was the underfunded unknown. Nobody had a clue, and I wasn't raising money. And so we put out a press release saying, it started with several quotes of his about how important debates were to the democratic process, and then saying we can only conclude that he's afraid to debate or thinks it's beneath him to debate a woman. Well, we had 2 debates like that, and one on domestic policy and one on foreign policy. And I think on the foreign policy military one, he actually thought, okay, she might know something about domestic, but this one I'll really get her on. So what I did was say, okay, who would be the best person to educate me about this? And at that point, Richard Nixon lived in the state, so I called him. I said, I'm the Republican candidate running against Bill Bradley, and he had me up to his offices and spent an hour and a half taking me around the world. And when I came to the debate, Bradley would throw out a weapon system and I knew what he was talking about, or he'd talk about some place and I'd know what he was talking about. He actually did a fundraiser for me when he was doing no fundraisers for anyone, and it was amazing. I still have people who will say that's the one political fundraiser they've gone to that they really thought they got their money's worth, because, you know, even though obviously we'd been through Watergate and he was terribly controversial and everything, but he was a bright guy and he knew stuff. And he stood there with a podium, nothing else, no chair, no books, no notes, just leaning on it for an hour and a half, and took people, again, all around the world, talking about all the different leaders and who had been in power when he was there, who was there now, what was happening. And then the very last question, it was in October, so what did he think about the World Series? He goes down the two teams and said, well, so-and-so's hitting, and such is pitching, you know, and has his fastball, and he just blew everybody away.
That's amazing. There had to be a point, though, where you believed you were going to win.
No.
Really?
No, and I had promised, no.
You never convinced yourself it was going to happen?
Well, the problem was, I was so sure it wasn't going to happen that I really didn't care, because one of the reasons that I did it and ran for the Senate, I mean, I would have been honored to have served in the Senate, but I really ran for the Senate to get exposure in the rest of the state, because I'd already decided that governor was the best job in the world.
I think you were the first politician I've ever heard to admit that. So that's incredible.
No, I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I don't have a chance. The last person was blown away, and that was the end of her political career, by being beaten by 16 percentage points. But I'm just not going to get around the state with the opportunity to meet all the candidates and a county chairman.
That's the big thing.
If I'm not a candidate and don't have a reason to be there. And so I said, okay, I'll take this on and try it. And if I can come close enough or run a decent enough, I didn't even think I'd get that close, but a decent enough race, then maybe I can be viable to run for governor.
You mentioned being pro-choice. I'm sure that is not and has not been popular in a lot of the circles that you've been in over the years. Are there any other either topics or just points where you maybe didn't feel like I don't belong in whatever group politically?
Well, I mean, now it didn't used to be, but now on things I have no problem with gay marriage. My husband and I, we were married 41 years before he died, and you know, it wasn't going to affect our marriage.
Was there anything else that surprised you that you weren't expecting from when you took over as governor? Maybe not policy related, just something about the office itself or having that position.
I'm not sure it was a surprise, except you don't think about it, and it was the hardest thing to get used to, which was 24/7 security.
Oh, that's interesting.
Having people in the house all the time, people with you every minute. I got very good at escaping, and the poor guys, I mean, I did put them through hell. We just had a reunion, actually, a bunch of them, about 20 of them came back. And some drop in just from time to say hi if they're in the neighborhood. But yeah, I would climb out windows and I would steal the car, and then I'd call.
You stole a car?
Well, it was my car.
Okay.
I mean, I took it. Well, once it was there, it was a state car, but I had the extra set of keys, and I took it. And I'd always call them eventually and say, "Do you know where your governor is?" And then I'd tell them. The best escape I ever did was up in New Haven. We were there for an event, and the troopers really thought they had me, because by this time they knew me and they knew I liked to do this kind of stuff. And we were in one of the colleges, and it was sort of there was a room here, and a little courtyard entryway, and so they were across the way from me, and my aide at the time, Jason Volk, was in the room next to me. And they had, to advertise my speaking there, they had these pictures of me, posters, you know, my
soon replaced by wanted posters.
Yeah, soon to be replaced by wanted posters. So I grabbed one of those, and then I told Jason, put your extra set of clothes in my room, and we're going to go out after we get back. Because, oh, by the way, this college was surrounded by a moat and a wall over the moat. And so after we finished the event and went back to the room, I told the guys, Jason, I have to go over some stuff for tomorrow. So they went to bed. We went into the room. He changed. We dropped out the window down into the moat area. I took the sign and I put one of those bubbles saying, "Do you know where your governor?" And put, you know, over my face, "Do you know where your governor is?"
You were just pranking them at this point.
Oh yeah. And the top of the stone wall that went around the moat was was some sharp bits. And Jason had climbed over, and he said, and I'd started up, and he said, "Stop, the people from the dinner are just coming by." So I had to drop back down again. But then I got out, and we went across the...
I'm pretty sure this was in The Great Escape, by the way. I'm pretty sure
And we went across the park there
Right.
and ended up in a bar. And I had to call down here to have them relay where I was.
Really?
They were so mad because they thought they had me this time. They're so mad. And I feel badly for them now because it was silly stuff to do,
Right.
and never wanted them to get blamed for anything that might have happened.
Sure, yeah.
But it was one of those things. I like being alone.
Right,
I
right.
have no problem with that.
Right, right.
You just get. But we treated them. I mean, they're good friends. As I
Right,
say,
right.
20 of them
They
came
came
back
back, yeah.
the other day, and we treat them like family because they live with you.
Mhm.
They are your family.